to welcome all at the session Historical and Contemporary Forms of Cooperation in Rural Areas. The world countryside suffers today from a multifaceted crisis. Rural areas depopulate, agriculture shrinks, and family farms are endangered. The expanding industrial agriculture endangers the environment and destroys the rural social fabric. Therefore, the countryside is of a desperate need of grassroots forms of organization. Cooperation in rural areas has a rich history that we can learn from. And this is what this session is about. So we should have one historical presentation. Maybe Mr. Radu will join us later, I hope so. And two presentations on contemporary forms of cooperation in rural areas, as well as cooperation between rural areas and the city, as in the case of the presentation of Dr. Ruta Śpiewak. So I would like to welcome Dr. Ilona Matysiak from the Maria Grzegorzewska University in Poland, and also Dr. Ruta Śpiewak from the Institute of Rural and Agricultural Development, Polish Academy of Sciences. And we will begin by the presentation by Dr. Ilona Matysiak, entitled Elderly People as Organizers of Care Provision in Rural Areas, Examples of Care Cooperatives in the Netherlands and the Village Movement in the US. So Ilona, the floor is yours. You should use the share screen button to share your presentation, right?
Okay, hello everybody. And first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this interesting conference. And now I will try to share my screen. I hope that I will succeed. So please let me know if you can see my presentation now.
Yes, we can see.
We can
okay.
see, yeah.
Okay, great. And you still see it?
It's great.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, so the aim of my presentation is to provide you with some insights about interesting, at least in my opinion, interesting collective initiatives focused on care provision for elderly people living in rural areas, which I observed in the Netherlands and in the US. And I will start with some more general information about rural aging and care provision. Then I will describe more in detail two cases, one from the Netherlands and the other from the US. And next, I will try to identify key factors contributing to the emergence of these initiatives. And I will end with discussion. First of all, as we all know it, both in the US and most European countries, the population living in the countryside ages more rapidly in comparison with those living in the cities. And it is basically due to longer life expectancy, out-migration of young adults, and also in some cases, at least, also in-migration of retirees. Secondly, shortages in social service provision are usually more severe in rural areas, basically due to large distances, as well as smaller and more scattered population. And it is also true for services especially important for older population, such as healthcare services, different types of long-term care services, including home-based care, community-based care, and also facility-based care. And also we observe shrinking family care provision due to young people's out-migration, just like Dr. Bilewicz just have mentioned. Then we observe two important trends from the state and citizens' perspective. So on the one hand, for obvious reasons, there is a need of keeping elderly people healthy, active, and independent as long as possible. And of course, preferences here are for cheaper, more local solutions, including citizens' initiatives. And on the other hand, citizens themselves also want to have a voice in this as potential contributors with their own preferences and ideas about care provision, like, for example, a strong preference for aging in place. Therefore, there is a need of creating solutions based on the mixture of formal and informal care services, tailored to specific needs in a given local community. Both in the Netherlands and in the US, there is an evidence of very interesting bottom-up responses to those needs. And their goal, the goal of such initiatives is to provide care which not only allows seniors to age in place, but also provides better, more personal and flexible care in comparison with those, let's say, more conventional care providers. They create a network of support under conditions of weakening family and neighborhood ties. They are also based on a mixture of professional healthcare and volunteering, and volunteering is often provided by older people themselves. And also older adults are often directly involved in establishing these entities. Interestingly enough, very similar types of initiatives emerged in very different contexts, like Netherlands and the US. They are very different in terms of, for example, the characteristics of rural areas, for example, or how welfare services or healthcare services or healthcare systems are organized. In the Netherlands, such initiatives seem to create alternatives for existing healthcare services. And in the US, as I will try to show you, these initiatives are very much focused on community building and also filling the gaps in healthcare system. So the Dutch example is the care cooperative Tot uw dienst, which means at your service. And it was established in 2005 in Laarbeck, in the province of North Brabant, which is in the southern part of the country. I came across it during my short-term scientific mission, so short research stay within a cost action at the University of Wageningen in February 2017. And I will try to tell you a little bit more about this. So how does it work in practice? The care cooperative Tot uw dienst is focused on home-based care provision, namely home health care, including palliative care, personal care and homemaking services, like, for example, helping in taking a bath, preparing meals, or cleaning the house. And services are mostly provided by trained professionals who are accepted by care seekers and with whom they develop long-term relationships based on mutual trust and also good knowledge of older person's condition as well as preferences. There is also a group of about 15 volunteers, often older adults, who are also involved in this, and who provide services or help with services that are not that do not require such professional and specialized medical knowledge or medical training. There are about 300 members in the cooperative. The membership fee is 16 euros for individuals and 22 euros if a couple registers. They pay such amount per year. And it is managed by a board, and also a members' assembly, as well as 2 employed nurses. And the main sources of funds are private money paid by members or their families for services received, funds provided by the municipality, and various grants from public institutions. The American example is the Share Care, Lila Now, which is a non-profit Michigan corporation registered in 1993. So it is not, let's say, a cooperative per se, but as you will see, their modus operandi is quite similar. It covers the Leelanau County, which is a rural area in northern Michigan in Great Lakes region. Importantly, this area is characterized by retirement migration. What I wanted to say is older Americans are moving there from larger cities upon their retirement. And I had the opportunity to do some research on this initiative when I was a Fulbright scholar at the Institute for Social Research at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor between 2017 and 2018. So how does it work? So Share Care is focused on home-based care as well, especially personal care, homemaker services, friendly visitor companion services, transportation, as well as respite care services for family caregivers. It also provides a free access to non-medical equipment, such as wheelchairs, bath seats, and walkers. And it provides also free of charge in-home health assessments that are performed by unemployed health coordinator, as they call this person. It's a registered nurse, and also advising on home health care providers. Importantly, volunteers, often older adults, play a very important role here. They provide many services, like, for example, transportation for those who are not able to drive anymore. And basically the notion of a community, of community building, creating bonds between people, and also neighbor to neighbor support is very important, is crucial here. There are almost 400 members who pay annually up to $600 or $1,000 in case of a couple. Share Care is managed by a board of volunteers together with unemployed executive director. And the main sources of funds are membership fees, fundraisers, and foundation endowment. What are the most important factors contributing to these initiatives? So first of all, a specific problem not addressed well within the current system. For example, services which quality is not satisfactory, or lack of certain types of services. In the Netherlands, the founder's wife suffered from dementia, and they were very dissatisfied with high rotation of care professionals and also fragmentarization of care provided within the, let's say, conventional system. In the US, the main trigger was the lack of sufficient home-based care services in this particular rural area. Secondly, local leaders with motivation, skills, and knowledge on the subject are crucial. In the Netherlands, the cooperative Tot Oefdienst was established by a retired, I will underline it, retired director of a large-scale healthcare institution in the area who used his experience and knowledge. And in the US, Share Care was established by 3 retired, and it's also important, retired couples with a very good knowledge and expertise on the subject, because there were physicians among them, one healthcare policy expert, and also a former member of the board of a retirement center. Also, inspirations of similar initiatives in other places are very important. For example, in the Netherlands, there were some already existing traditions of cooperativism in the region. And they also looked at examples of care cooperatives in Sweden. And in the US, for Share Care, the main source of inspiration was a non-profit mixing professional care and volunteering, which already existed in Maryland. Last but not least, also networking with similar organizations is very important factor here. In the Netherlands, some regional umbrella structures linking care cooperatives were created. And it is also important to mention that the state supports this type of initiatives really strongly. And in the US, Share Care joined the nationwide village network consisting of similar types of organizations covering both rural and urban areas. And in conclusion, I would like to discuss some strengths and weaknesses of such initiatives, like based on my observations and this research, of course. So as for advantages, they are very local and very focused on home-based care, which really goes very well in line with older adults' preferences towards aging in place. They are also flexible and tailored to what is needed, filling in care gaps in rural areas. And they also show the importance of older people as active contributors to care provision. As for the weaknesses, first of all, their financial instability and also strong dependence on members and volunteers needs to be emphasized. Apart from that, they exist kind of outside of the broader healthcare system, at least so far. So they are rather running next to it, but not within it. Also, it is important to mention their dependence on local leaders with sufficient knowledge and skills. So human capital, social capital is very important here. And also a very important issue is an exclusivity of such initiatives. So the question how truly open they are for people, for example, with less resources, people from disadvantaged groups or immigrants, for example. And I would like to end with raising a question, how transferable would this model be to different institutional and cultural contexts, for example, with weaker traditions of volunteering and donating money to private and civil initiatives, like Poland, for example. So that is all. Just some references for those who are more interested. And that would be it. Thank you very much for your attention. So I will stop sharing now.
Okay, thank you very much, Ilona, for your very interesting presentation. So now we will move to the presentation of Dr. Ruta Śpiewak, Alternative Food Networks as Food Citizenship. So Ruta, the floor is yours now.
Thank you. I have to share screen, yes?
Yes, please.
Share screen. Does it work now?
No, not yet. Yes. Oh, yes, we can see it.
From beginning, is it the first slide? Because I've
Yes.
never done it before, sorry.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
We can see it.
Hello, thank you very much. My presentation is more theoretical than Ilona's. I actually regret, maybe I should have speak more about the practice, and I'm not only focused on rural areas, because I'm focused on food, and food is the issue that concerns everyone, both citizens of rural areas and citizens of everyone, yes. And we cannot even anywhere anymore. The food is not just produced on rural areas. So of course it's it's still very much about rural areas, but not only. There are growing number of city inhabitants growing food. Today I would like to talk about the food citizenship. I have to honestly, I have the maybe strange to start the presentation saying that I have a problem, but I have a problem with this notion because I think it's difficult. Even the authors of this notion, or the authors that I read about this notion, they said it's difficult, and I have also the same problem to distinguish this if it's analytical term or this is emotional or normative, emotional, ideological, normative term. I myself am involved in various forms of the alternative food networks. So I see now it's very difficult for me to speak about it in very objective manner. And as I went through my presentation last time, I realized that it's quite normative. So I'm just a little bit afraid, but I'm also curious how you see it. If we scientists or researchers can speak from more normative point of view. There is a growing body of literature, especially about the normative, about the public sociology. The Buravoy was the author who maybe not introduced, but talked a lot about that. And I don't know. I'm just open, but I'm saying from the beginning, I would like to say that I have a problem if my term is is it fully analytical term. So I think that the issue of food, the issue of it is very much connected with environment. The issue of environment became already so important that this year, when the Oscars were during the Oscar night, just before the pandemics, during the night, Jacques Phoenix said something that really was important, touched me a lot, and this is the key issue, or maybe the starting point. He said, "I think we became very disconnected from the natural world, and many of us, we are guilty of an egocentric worldview that believe that we are the center of the universe. We go into the natural world and we plunder it for its resources." And I think this is really something when at the Oscar night, instead of speaking about movies and stars, people start to speak about the environment. So this is my starting point. The food system, global food system, is in the multidimensional crisis. I will not talk about precisely every element of this crisis because it would take forever. Just would like to show how the food system is sophisticated system of connected many dimensions, and all these dimensions, because the food system is in crisis, all the dimensions are in crisis. Of course, this is a question: what comes first? Dominant economic model based on endless growth pushes the limits of natural and social resources. The food system, which includes all the actors and institutions as well, involved in producing, distributing, consuming, and disposing food, is biased by multiple problems. from unacceptable levels of food waste to the growing ecological footprint of agriculture, from chronic soil depletion to recurrent food scarce. Just to say one number, over 37% of methane emission results from factory farming. Industrial agriculture sucks up to 70% of the world's fresh water supplies. This is just to show the frames frames I'm functioning within. So I think that another issue I have to mention at the beginning is that, and this is also more about normative term than analytical term, that in order to understand the notion of food citizenship, we have to start seeing food not anymore as a consumer good, but more as a common good or public good. This is something that Vivero said about before those notions were introduced by Ostrom was very much fan of those terms. So in order to the future food policies, in order to switch the understanding of food toward to understanding it as a common good, future food policies should be based on a redefinition of the consumption of food products as an expression of citizenship. I am talking about the alternative in my presentation. I'm focusing on alternative food networks, and they are a form of expression of food citizenship, or they are a form of creating food citizenship, as I will argue, just creating, or maybe even not creating, but as a way forward the discussion about food citizenship. The contestation of existing food system and the will to establish some alternatives has been the key driver for the creation of alternative food networks. This term covers different types of formal and informal institutions that aim to challenge the dominant food system by strengthening horizontal networks within the food system. The change can be achieved by introducing new model of governance. IFNs are polycentric system consisting of many autonomous institutions whose common purpose is decentralization and democratization of food provisioning. At least this is in theory, yes. I will later argue that sometimes it's just a theory. Governance shift can be achieved only based on the strengthening the agency of actors involved in those networks. Individual and collective agency is linked to the concept of the food citizenship. Alternative food networks, as I said, is the alternative to mainstream industrial food system. This is something that it's also an issue of what is alternative. It's also, it could be another probably month of conversations. They are centered on ideas of quality and spatial and social embeddedness. And they try reconnect consumers and food producers in more direct way. And so my question I'm trying to ask in my presentation, and later on I would like to do more research about it, is it that can various types of Polish alternative food networks influence a change in the governance of food system based on the actions of consumers, citizens? Another question is, do people involved in this kind of networks try to achieve individual goals like development of own enterprise or taking care of their own health, or they try to shape new relations around food production and consumption? So I'm trying to ask if the alternative food networks that are created in this particular circumstances of Poland, those alternative networks can challenge the dominant food network, and if the actors involved in those networks are really can be understood as a food citizens or just basic consumers. So what the food citizenship is? This is the idea that is rarely discussed. So I'm just trying to briefly present. This is the idea of regaining the agency and choice within the food systems. This is based on the autonomy and ability to define and exercise citizens' food preferences. So food citizenship is that people are not anymore just consumers, but they can act, they have to act. Agency and resistance are not only the answer to state actions, but they are also part of local practice. Food citizenship cultivates in private and public sphere. Can be and became food citizenship requires above all a change in the management and approach to food of various types of institution. Only through active food citizenship, approach of sustainable and democratic system can be achieved. Food citizenship manifests at the individual sphere and at the collective sphere at the same time. So individual sphere, P1 have to define and choose their food preferences and develop the food behavior they feel are the best. But at the collective sphere, it is to come in as a group. For example, it can be some type of network, is to intervene in decision, both political and structural. And the collective sphere is also have, at this level, we have to try to change the food behavior and models promoted by agro corporations. So how you see the way it's defined, it's kind of, it's very normative. So I have this bias problem with this. The citizenship, generally, not just the food citizenship, is the status awarded to the full-fledged members of your community. Its beneficiaries are equal regarding the rights and obligations involved. So this is something that is new, that that's food citizenship are not just the basic consumers, those who just go buy and eat, but they have to be also active. So notion of citizenships includes three basic aspects. It's belonging to a political community, and under this conception, every community is political. Rights and participation, something that we as a just consumer forget that we have to participate also. So the question is, I am not sure, this is very preliminary way, trying to find out how to measure if we are in the process of shaping the food citizenship. In my research, I propose that I will see how the people, actors involved in the alternative food networks, who are they? What their motivations, what values, attitudes, and knowledge they possess about the food system and all the issues connected with it. And how do alternative food networks operate? And the most important question here is, are they inclusive or exclusive? Because as far as they are, if they exclude some people, is it the way to create citizenship based on exclusion? So I did me and my friends, it's not just my research, I made it with my friend Wojtek Koszczyński. We chose 6 Polish case studies. I would just very briefly say about it. In Poland, we did the interviews. We went there. We tried to be part of each of these networks just for a while. I mean, to observe. We defined not alternative food networks quite broadly. So we did the research at the farmers market for the wealthier people at the middle-sized city. We included very different as a family allotments in the small city on the Ukraine border. We did the research in local action group because they are focused on producing food. We did the research in new established food cooperative in small city. We did research in a consumer cooperative, very progressive and for Polish tradition, quite old food cooperative. And we did the interviews in the Małopolski Przełom Wisły, it's Doliny Wisły. It's a wine grower association, very elitist, very elitist this is Association of Wine Producers in Poland. Polish wine is very expensive, and it's just for the very wealthy, rather for very wealthy people, as it's really much more expensive than the wine, than the Italian or Spanish wine. So very preliminary results of our research is that motivation of actors, they are mostly both end producers and consumers or buyers, or they are very focused, mostly focused on their own health and family health. They are very much focused on their own good food safety, but just for their own concern, yes, for their own safety of their family, of the close ones. The very important notion is notion of comfort, to feel comfortable, to have a good food, but just for yourself or family, or for just to feel comfortable. And this is also looking for the traditional food. It's a way of escaping fear of modernity, yes. Values of the alternative food networks, as I say, it's very preliminary results, so it's very basic. The most important values for the people we talked with are the family issues, the tradition, and the convenience. The food has to be your family. The family is very important, that feels good, and we care about family. The tradition, the traditional food, sometimes it's even made up tradition, but it's some kind of tradition, and it has to be convenient. Yes, it's important to get food in very convenient way, even if it's in the alternative, even obtained in the alternative way. So we observe the very small, to a very small extent, the environmental concerns, so some public concern. Yes, people speak very seldom about the food is produced in the environmental protective way. If they want to, they speak about the food most of the time. Those radical forms of alternative food networks, like cooperatives, these are the people who speak about the environmental concern. And the issue of sharing food with those less fortunate, poor people very rarely comes in our observation. This is just food for my body, myself, we obtain. And Poland still has a problem with cooperation and sharing food and knowledge. There's all the time problem with low level of social capital. So even people engaged in the alternative food networks has a problem with cooperation. So with this this aspect of participation in the when we speak about the when we speak about the food citizenship, there is this issue of participation. We hardly, even in those alternative food networks, we see it very rarely. So there was also a question whether alternative food networks are more exclusive or inclusive. So they are quite exclusive. Besides the family allotment, the picture on the left, it's family allotments. This is something that is very inclusive. The rest of the alternative food networks we analyzed are quite these are quite exclusive. This is the only inclusive. Yes, the wine association, for example, is just for very wealthy people who have enough knowledge to understand the wine production and to be able to enjoy very specific wine, Polish wine. So this is they operate exclusively based on the economical resources, time resources, knowledge resources. So in order to be member of the alternative food networks, you have to have money, you have to have time to be member or to participate in it, and enough knowledge to understand the value of the better food. Sometimes to be able, for example, to enjoy Polish wine, you have to know what you are looking for, really. So it's still, I would like to stress, it's very preliminary. Alternative food networks is less about the exercising essential shift in the food systems through change of governance model based on the food citizenship. Is much more about fulfilling various individual needs. Most actors are not gaining agency, and food citizenship very rarely, if only, at the individual level. So this is just the very preliminary, and I am asking, I would like to dig in more how to bite it further, whether we can establish food citizenship, whether we can even use this term, or it's not, is it too much emotion and too much normative term, or we are allowed to use, or we are the researchers, are we allowed to use this normative terms? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ruta. Now we can open the discussion part. If you have any questions to our panelists, please unmute yourself and just pose the question. So the floor is now for all the participants. Really, no questions?
So maybe I will have a comment if possible.
Yes, please.
Okay, I really enjoyed Ruta's presentation. It was very, very interesting. And I think that it's quite interesting, like this, I don't know, this one common issue that appeared in both our presentations, like this notion of this issue of how those initiatives are inclusive and to what extent are they exclusive. So I think that would be interesting maybe to discuss it some more. If not now, maybe during some other occasion. And also, as for your preliminary findings, I think that it's kind of pessimistic, like that those alternative food networks, people who are involved in it, they rather create comfortable niches for themselves or for people who are around them, and they are not really interested in actually making a change or changing the system, influencing the system in a more active way. I don't know if you would like to comment a little bit on that, because I don't know, for me it sounds a bit pessimistic, but maybe it's not that pessimistic after all.
When you were talking about those options for older people, I also was thinking that this is great, but this is just for the very privileged. Yes, both in income and also some social capital to find this. Yeah. But still, it's great that such initiatives are raised, and I know that Poland tries to do some similar to follow this path. Mm-hmm. So why not? I mean, it doesn't harm anyone. Right. And I know that for example, in America, there is a discussion how to include more people from other social classes in the alternative food networks. So maybe this means that we are in the process of some development just to feed ourselves, our needs, and then we will be able to step back and see other people. So those American examples, there's a really rich body of literature trying to poor or from some minorities, people also need quality food, and they should be able to participate in it. So maybe also the example of your example can be shared. I mean, I know they are already shared in Poland. I don't know how well it works, but this example, this works as an example. Yes, so maybe this is some niches that can be beginning of something new.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, so I have maybe a question to Ilona Matysiak. Could you maybe say something about the history of such care cooperatives? I could refer to the Polish Spółdzielnie Zdrowia, and it was a similar thing in the interwar period in Poland, the so-called health cooperatives, and I think they originated in Yugoslavia, but I don't know much more about them. And maybe a more local questions about chances of transferring these ideas to Poland. What do you think, if there are any chances to establish such networks in Polish rural areas?
So as for the history, so in the Netherlands, those care cooperatives are quite new, actually. Because the first one, I think it was established in 2000 something. The one that I was talking about is not the first, but it's one of the first. So it's quite recent initiative or type of initiative, and it was quite strongly supported by the government, by the Dutch government on the national level and also local authorities, because they try to kind of change how a healthcare system and basically social services system provision works, turning it to more local and decentralized. So it's quite recent, and I'm not really sure, because that's what I mentioned, that there were some traditions of cooperativism in this region in the Netherlands, but those cooperatives in the past, I just heard about it in the interview, and they were not related to care provision. So they were probably related to food or maybe agriculture, and I'm not sure about that. But it was also quite interesting because the founders of the care cooperatives, of the care cooperative in the Netherlands that I was talking about, they actually were more inspired by recent current care cooperatives in Sweden than the traditions of cooperativism already existing in the region. So they were aware of it, they mentioned that, but it wasn't like the main source of inspiration, I would say. And this care cooperative, in maybe I shouldn't really use this term because it's really a non-profit, an American example. It was established at the beginning of 1990, and it was directly inspired by a similar organization in Maryland that they just happened to know because of some family and professional connections. So there is not like a broader history of this type of initiatives there. And it was very interesting what you mentioned about the traditions of health cooperatives in our region. So I was wondering if maybe you could recommend some articles about it. I would be very interested in reading them.
Okay. Yes, of course. I will try.
Right, and transferring. Your question about the chances of transferring this model to Poland. So I'm not sure about it. Ruta mentioned that similar initiatives already exist in Poland. I don't know about them. I would be happy to know some more, so I will do some research, that's for sure. But I'm not really, probably like the important issue here would be like already existing legal regulations, whether they allow for establishing this kind of initiative. And if yes, in what form? As a non-profit, as an NGO, as a social cooperative, or I don't know, like what would be a legal framework for establishing this kind of initiative. And the other problem, I think, would be like sources of funding, because I don't know, like whether such initiatives could be included somehow in NFZ system, like this public public funding system of healthcare. Maybe they shouldn't, but if not, like what would be the stable source of funding for them from local authorities, from some, I don't know, local, maybe hospitals, public local hospitals, but if yes, on what basis, on what legal basis? I think that it would be quite complicated. And I'm not really sure whether it will be sustainable enough paid only by people, by members, people using this kind of services. So we are getting back a little bit to this issue of exclusivity and inclusivity.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, I believe that those pre-war cooperatives, healthcare cooperatives, were only financed by members. Yeah, so thank you very much. And we have a question from Zofia Łapniewska, please.
Hi, thank you for both presentations. They were very interesting, actually. So you actually, Ilona, responded to all my questions posted, but I have also this second thoughts about the system, and this is what Ilona also said in her presentation, that do we really need to strip out the state from its responsibilities by creating a company, which is cooperative? It's a company, it's a private company owned by members, and it's also on the market, yes, selling its services, usually, like this is how the cooperatives operate. And then, of course, we have some associations like Red Cross, which is also present in Poland, and it's also a substitute to the NFZ. And then that's the question, if all of us have to establish companies like cooperatives for the future to have really the access to care services in our old age, and also what to do with shares, because as far as I know, this is how it looks in Germany, because I done some research in Germany. So most of members, they just buy shares. And then if someone dies in Poland, that's really problematic, because then of course there is an inheritance law. You cannot have, like in the US, a trust that it's disposing of your maternal wealth. So then it's also problematic if this should be sold to another members, or there is unlimited membership, or it's limited, and how really actually this operates. So you said in the Netherlands, it's 300 members, but this is like a limit. They decided, okay, no more people we accept, or no members. And what happens to if the couple or someone dies, passes away, then what happens to the shares? So I'm really interested in this. And I think in Poland, the law is such against the cooperatives that I think nowadays, I also observe energy cooperatives in many countries, and in Poland, the law is horrible, really horrible. Oh, okay. So thank you for your presentations.
Thank you very much for your comment and your interesting questions. So as for the membership, they don't have any limit. So it's just 300 members that they have in the Netherlands. And to be honest, I'm not so sure about like what they do with the shares and how is it organized and how does it work. It would be good to do some follow-up research because there is almost no articles about it or reports existing on the subject. There are in Dutch. The webpage of this cooperative is in Dutch, so like using Google Translator is not a very, very good idea to understand how it works. So I would need to look for some more information about it, to get some more details how it is internally organized in terms of management and also management of shares. I think that in case of the American organization, it's a different story because it's a non-profit, so it's not a cooperative as such. And they have like almost 400 members, but they would like to have some more. They're actually kind of afraid of older members dying out, so they're trying to reach some more to get more people, like more younger, older adults, let's say, around 60 or something like that, because they are so much based on volunteers' contribution. So they really need new people. So it's a big challenge now for them.
Thank you.
There is another hand raised from Macondas, please.
Okay, I don't know if you can hear me. I always have problem with my mic, but I had a question to Ilona. Maybe actually that was said, but I somehow didn't grasp it. I was wondering what is the structure of such enterprises, both in Netherlands and in USA. I was wondering if there is any help from, maybe not help, but any care is provided by, for example, migrant women or any employees that are employed but not members of such enterprises themselves. And yeah, so in general, the structure of work and who really provides the care to clients and pensioners in such enterprises.
Okay. Thank you for this question. It's a very important one. As for migrant care providers, I was actually kind of surprised, like with this Dutch care cooperatives. It's not the only one that I was looking at, although this one is the one that I know the most, I would say. That, as I said, for example, answering Zofia's question, that their webpage is in Dutch. So it already creates a barrier, I think. If you are a migrant, you don't speak Dutch that well, and you would be interested in joining. That's, I think, it's like a first barrier that you come across. And also, like the members of the cooperatives and also volunteers are mostly or only local, original, let's say, Dutch people. It was also the case of share care in the US. I think partly because, like in general, rural areas in the United States are quite wide. Maybe depends on the state, and it also changes in some regions. But rural population, people living in rural areas, are rather wide. And this is also the case of Liranau County that I was talking about. so members of the cooperative, they are like most of them, they are retired older Americans, middle-class Americans with high education and good economic resources, who moved to Leelanau County, which is really beautiful because it's in the Great Lakes area, so it's really nice. They moved there upon retirement, so it's kind of, they created a bubble in a way, a middle-class bubble, and they didn't mention any migrants that provide care services or are volunteers within care cooperative. I don't know if I answered your question more or less.
Yes, sorry, I forgot to thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I would have one question to Ruta Śpiewak, maybe a general one. Ruta, what do you think, in which direction do AFNs, alternative food networks, change the rural landscape? And maybe is there a chance for them to contribute to saving smallholder farming on a larger scale?
I would hope so, but I would hope so. I am a member of food cooperative, and I see that so many more and more people are interested in our cooperative, on both sides. But still, it is very elitistic actions, institution. In the Ostrom's terms, we can say institution, and I am afraid that I'm afraid that this never will be able to cross this elitistic bubble. That's why we also decided to do this research also in different types of food networks, as the działki, family allotments, because they are for people who are very working class, and to see if this is the way of providing quality food for people. Because people are looking for quality food in different ways, and this is more affordable for people through this family allotments. And I see that there is, as I said, a big discussion already started that those alternative way of providing food are just for elites, so the people start to see, especially in the United States, that this has to be challenged and become more open for other people. And when I talk to farmers, I see people asking about cooperatives and about the community supported agriculture, but it's still niche, and I'm not sure if this might be changed in the short period of time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much. Are there still any more questions to our two speakers? Okay, so I don't see any more hands raised, so maybe we could finish a little bit earlier our session, because there is the third speaker, unfortunately, was not with us. So thank you very much, Ilona and Ruta, for your contribution to the conference. It was really interesting. And we can meet now. We will have a break after this presentation. So in order to go, if you want to see a presentation of an artistic collective that will be during that break, you should return to this first link, yes, of in our conference. Oh yes, Anya, the admin, has just given it to us. And after the break, we have the keynote speech, so it will be also on the first main link. So thank you very much once more for all participants. Thank you very much, and see you later.